so the first question is, can you talk about your military experience and why you got in and why you got out?
Yeah, so I joined the military about a year out of high school. Um, it started off with just not really knowing what to do after high school. I wasn't too great in school, um, but I also had a lot of family members that joined the military. I had an aunt that was in the Marines. I had my uncle and my grandfather in the Air Force, a cousin who was in the Marines. So um, kind of went from me not knowing what to do to just kind of doing what everyone else in my family does. And after that, after finally deciding that I was going to go into the military, I was really dead set on the Air Force. Um, but their lack of need for personnel and the wait list that they had, it was about a 2 year wait list for me to be able to get in. So after they told me that, I went home, thought about it for about a week, came back into that same recruiter's office, and decided to just go straight into the Army as a medic, which is what I wanted to do in the Air Force, but not enough slots. Um, and so that's how I got into the Army as a medic. Um, and then from there, the process really wasn't that hard. I mean, a whole bunch of paperwork, physicals, making sure you're physically and mentally all there. Um, Yeah, I had a couple different slots actually. I was supposed to go to South Carolina initially for basic training. That got pushed back. They never told me why. Then I was supposed to go to Fort Leonard Wood in Missouri. That got pushed back for medical reasons that they never told me about. So finally, I ended up at Fort Sill in Oklahoma. Um, Not the best place to start out, but basically a smaller and crappier version of where I finished out my military career at Fort Hood. But yeah, finished out basic at Fort Sill, then moved on to medic training at uh, what is that base called? Oh man, Fort Sam Houston in San Antonio. Um, that's where finished out all my medical training. Got married while I was there. Not expected. Didn't last long. Um,
Same old story.
yeah, more for the pay than anything. And then after that, they give you a choice of you get to list your top three options for stateside and then international. Um, and I put Texas as my first option stateside, and I just managed to get it at Fort Hood. Um, Not the base I would have chose, but whatever. Um,
If you know, you know.
yeah, but the great thing was there were a lot of great people there. Um, and one of the big things that really helped, honestly, was the people that were there and then the social life outside of work. So the friends that I made being at Fort Hood and Fort Hood being so centrally located in Texas, we had, I think from Fort Hood to Austin is an hour drive. You have about an hour and a half to Dallas, 3 hours to Houston, 2 hours to San Antonio. So really, Friday after we get off work, you pick your destination and you can spend an entire weekend there. So that's really was it. And then I went over to Europe for 9 months. Um, about 4 months after I got to Fort Hood is when I was first sent to Europe on a rotation. And I say rotation, not a deployment, because there wasn't anything active going on. There's no war, or it was more for training. So we spent about 6 months in Poland, two in well, I spent two in Latvia. I was attached to a infantry group, so we spent 2 months in Latvia for training. Came back to Poland, and then everyone in Poland was wrapping up and we were going to head out to Germany to finish up our rotation. And that's where I finished my first rotation. Came back to the U.S., had about 6 months layoff time, just kind of chilling, just making sure our vehicles and everything were up. And then we went to Louisiana for JRTC. Um, don't recommend it. Louisiana is not the place you want to be, especially in summertime. Hot, muggy. You have on all these full battle clothes. I mean, yeah, it's just not it. But it was a good experience. Spent, I want to say it was about a month and a half in Louisiana. And every day, it wasn't like Europe. Every day was training. There were no long weekends or time off. Came back to Texas, had about uh, a year off, and then that's when we got word that we were going to Korea. Um, but thankfully, I was at the end of my contract, so it was really up in the air. It was all based on the commander at the time if he was going to send me and then pay me to fly back, which he never did. So I got to stay home, finish out my career at Fort Hood, get out, and yeah, that's really it. 4 years in the army.
Was it as fast as they say it is?
Probably not at the time, but thinking back, yeah, it flew by. Because I mean, I feel like Europe, especially the first rotation, definitely flew by. Yeah, thinking back.
So, obviously medic, I kinda wanna
Yep.
know why you chose it, and also what's your kind of tip for, I guess, new soldiers when it comes to picking what their, MOS or trying to cater toward one?
Um, so I became a medic first and foremost because my mom is a pediatric nurse. So healthcare has always been at least big in my life. I mean, I used to for bring your kid to work day. My mom would always bring me. Um, even bringing my mom to class for I don't remember what it's called when your parents come in. They talk about their work and their job.
Yeah,
My mom would always show up and she'd talk about it. So it was always a big thing in my life, healthcare, and that's probably the main reason why I chose it. Also, everyone else in my family has done something more along infantry lines, so there's just kind of a branch out. Um, but any advice that I would give, don't listen to the recruiters. I mean,
yeah.
the recruiter that I talked to, he was trying to place me in a he was trying to get me a mortar job, and I don't know what the MOS code is for it, but don't just listen to your recruiter and take the first job they tell you about. It's read over. They can give you a list. They may not tell you about it, but ask for a list of jobs and how many slots are available for that job. Read over that list, go online, look, search what goes into that job because a lot of the times the recruiters do not tell you at all. They don't tell you what goes into it, how much time you have to spend. I don't know. At least for a medic, you have to spend a lot of nights obviously studying medical books and EMT things, and so just make sure you take your time when you talk to your recruiter and pick out a job because it's going to be your life for the next 4 years or however long your contract is.
Nice, that's definitely I think that's awesome. That's a great that might even be the title of the
Recruiters are
video.
not, yeah,
So, you obviously touched on your family. You are adopted. Can you
yes,
kinda talk about that?
yeah, yeah. I was adopted when I was two, turning three. Um, I don't know anything about my biological family. I know I was born and raised in Tampa, so I was adopted, obviously, but my parents adopted me in Tampa, and that's where I was born. Um, So yeah, 2 turning 3, I was adopted. My parents are they moved down from Virginia. They had lived in Florida for about 2 years after they bought their house. Um, they were really dead set on being parents. Um, just turns out they could never have children themselves. So they went around, they were looking, and my mom, the way my mom tells it, the storyteller that she is, claims that she walked into the room and there was this big window looking out to the playground out back, and she just saw me, little blonde-haired, blue-eyed, goofy kid, and she said she knew. So, um, yeah, and then I was adopted and couldn't be more happy or thankful for the family that I have.
So I know a lot of adoption families are like mixed, ethnicities and stuff like that. Like
Oh
your
yeah,
brother is
yeah, my
African. Can you talk about
yeah,
how
yeah,
that
yeah.
was growing up with that?
So I was adopted 2 turning 3 when I was about 5 or 6. My parents decided they wanted to have more children. So they got into the process again, started looking, and they adopted my brother Aiden. Um, and he was a baby. He was about, yeah, he was about 3 or 4 months here, 4 months when they adopted him. And they picked him up in Pensacola, Florida.
Drive.
Yeah, yeah. I remember that drive. Funnily enough, even at that age, it was about 6, 7 hour trip.
Did you know before then that he was
I didn't know. I
they
didn't
got you?
know. They had probably told me,
Yeah.
but I don't remember ever knowing until we got there. And we get to Pensacola. We drive up to this like big office building. Um, walk in, and my parents are signing papers. And then this lady walks in, and she's holding a little baby in her arms. And at the time, I probably couldn't comprehend what was going on. But I mean, why was this baby coming into the room? And we end up leaving with the baby. So
Mm,
now I have a 7 hour drive as a 5 year old with a screaming baby that doesn't know where he's going.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, that's how we got my brother. My brother is half black. As far as I know, he has no ties to his biological family either. I don't think he's ever reached out or tried to find them. And then after my brother, there was a period of time where I think my parents were set on the number of children they had, just my brother and I, but they wanted more kids around. So for a time there, for a couple of years actually, they were foster parents. So for a couple of years, there were just kids coming in and out of the house. My brother and I would wake up, come downstairs to the family room at 6 in the morning on a Saturday when we're trying to watch cartoons, and we see 3 kids laying on our couch where we're trying to sit down and watch TV. And so we have to leave the room and then wake up our parents, and like 3 kids just laying on our couch. So they did that for a while. Um, there was actually a sister before my sister. Um, they started the adoption process. Her name was Jocelyn. Um, and it turns out she was a lot older. She was about 16 years old when my parents decided that they wanted to adopt her. They tried fostering for a while,
Mm-hmm.
and it seemed to work out well. But when the adoption process came around, she just kind of decided it just wasn't for her, and
Mm-hmm.
they understood and they were fine with that. Um, and about a year after that, um, my parents found my sister Grace, who was in a very, very tough situation. She was born early, extremely early. Um, she is 100% Mexican, and I don't think her parents were ever really documented. So they just kind of did odd jobs here and there. But for the most part, from what I understand, is they would leave her in the high chair all day in front of the TV, give her food sparingly, and that was her life until my parents adopted her at about 4 or 5 years old.
How old were you then?
Um, I would have been 10 or 11 at that time. And it was so bad that when she got to our house, she didn't know what stairs were. And so the first time my brother and I ever met Grace was we woke up in the morning and there were a whole bunch of couch and like pillows at the bottom of the stairs because she had never seen stairs before. And if she just happened to get out of her room, they didn't want her falling down the stairs and cracking her head on the tile at the bottom of the stairs.
Wow.
So the whole like first floor, right at the bottom of the stairs, was just all pillows and like blankets and yeah. So that's how all three of us came about.
It's awesome, man.
Yeah.
I mean, your parents, I mean, from what I met, it's obviously just people that adopt. Amazing.
Yes. Yeah.
Um, you weren't obviously the parents, but as the older sibling and the first, is there kind of a piece of advice you could give to anyone interested in adoption and or adoptees, other people that are being adopted?
Um. Yeah. I think for parents that are going to adopt or thinking about it, always keep an open mind. Um. I know for most parents out there, they just want a loving home and bring a child into that. But at the same time, you have to think of that child's background. If find out as much as you can, because what you're bringing them into, you may think it's as loving as possible or whatever, but it just may not be that kind of situation that they need. Um, but definitely 100% if you can't have children of your own, or even if you can have children of your own. I mean, adoption. There are always kids out there that need some type of love, some type of parent, mentorship, whatever it is. Even if you don't adopt, like I said, my parents were foster parents. You just bring kids in. They even 2 weeks. We had kids stay with us for a week at a time, 2 weeks, and to be able to see a loving parent or a relationship like that can be a big impact on a kid's life.
Yes. And then the second question was for anyone
Oh
being
yeah.
adopted.
Um, well, for me, I was too young to realize what was going on. But I think if you're older, kind of the same thing applies. Keep an open mind. These are obviously people that want to give back. So keep an open mind. No one is forcing you or telling you that you have to call them mom or dad right away. They just want to give back and to be able to give you a loving, healthy relationship with parents, something that you've never had. So I think it's definitely key to keep an open mind.
Awesome, bro. Well, we're just gonna stick on this family train,
Okay.
and kind of dive into your own relationships right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have a fiance
Yep.
and about to be 3-year old little
About to be
girl.
3. Yep.
So can you dive into how that relationship first started, and then obviously talk about little baby Emily?
Yeah. So I met Lindsay in February of 2020. So right before COVID hit. Um,
Yeah, literally a month before.
yeah, but I was out in the field at the time, and I had just gotten out to the field in the army. So I was going to be out there for 2 weeks. So I wasn't going to be able to see her. So I had met her on Tinder, and the entire time I was out in the field, I was just messaging her every day for pretty much the whole day. I don't know how I got anything done, but yeah. As soon as I got out of the field, we had the next day off, so I took that time to drive from Fort Hood to Waco, which is about an hour drive, and come meet her for the first time. Um, and yeah, that's how we first met. Um, can't really say anything else about it. I mean, spent that first night together, talking a lot, hanging out, getting to know each other. Um, and it hasn't really stopped since. Still talking, getting to know each other, and loving every day.
Yeah.
Um, and then about 3 years ago now, um, Emily came around. It was 2022 or 2021 actually, when everyone else found out. But Lindsay was working at Ascension Hospital at the time, and while at work, she was talking to some of her coworkers about how she felt nauseous and uh, felt like vomiting, and it just wasn't her day. And as a joke, they suggested she take a pregnancy test, um, and she did, and she found out she was pregnant. And so later that day, she gets home from work. She didn't text me anything, call me, nothing all day. Gets home from work and just comes in the door absolutely bawling. And I'm like, what the hell is going on? What are you crying about? What happened? And she says, I don't want you to be mad, but as a joke, they told me to take a pregnancy test because I was feeling like crap all day. And turns out I am pregnant. And she was kind of just scared that I would leave because we hadn't really cemented anything at that point. I mean, we were boyfriend, girlfriend, but
Yeah, y'all living together at that point.
yeah, but we hadn't really talked about children or where anything was beyond living together. Um, and I said, nope, I'm here for good. I'm not going to go. And then 9 months later, Emily came around, April 12th, 2022, about 3 in the afternoon, born to Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban.
That was playing on
It
the screen.
was, it was. As soon as we got into that room, Lindsay and I put on the TV, and they had like a little Harry Potter marathon going on.
Oh yeah, because she was fast. I remember the group chat. You guys
Yeah,
texted, and what, less than 3, 4 hours later?
yeah. So we got through the first two movies, and we were on Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, and we were about maybe 30 minutes in.
You remember the scene? You know what
No, I don't remember the scene, but
it is?
I do remember she was born to Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. Um, and yeah, it was real quick. I mean, they always talk about labor being extremely hard, and I'm sure it was for the short amount of time, but they talk about how long it usually is, and it was not. I mean, we were in that room for about 3 hours max before Emily popped out, and then they moved us up to the recovery ward. So yeah,
How was what's it called? How was that? Like just seeing your kid. Can you describe that?
it was crazy. Honestly, I didn't know what to feel or if I was feeling anything at all. Honestly,
Really?
um, I didn't get to hold her right away. Or Lindsay was holding Emily, and then they said that she was breathing abnormally, so she spent the first night in the ICU or in the NICU, um, in like basically a little plastic clear box where they help pump in air and get your lungs going. So all I did for that entire first night, about I set an alarm for about every 2 hours. I would get up, leave the recovery room where Lindsay was, and I would walk over to the room that she was in, and I would just look through this big glass window and just watch her for about an hour, and then go back. Um, and then it wasn't until maybe the third day, early morning of the third day that we were there, that they finally said she was okay enough to come out of that box, and we would be able to hold her and start nursing her. Um, and it was just surreal to hold Emily for the first time. I mean, Lindsay and I aren't huge human beings by any stretch. I'm 5'6", 5'7" on a good day. Lindsay's 5'2". So Emily being born, she was, I don't even remember, like 4. I don't even know,
When she
but
was tiny, I remember
she's
that.
tiny, and so just holding her little tiny body in my arms was just surreal. There's no words or there's nothing to describe it for the first time. Um, Definitely something that will always stick with me and something that I can still see clear as day, even right now. So,
It's beautiful, bro.
yeah.
So fatherhood. What is your biggest kind of advice for future parents?
Roll with the punches. Roll with the punches. When they're babies, obviously they need everything that you give them. Um, but after that baby phase, when they start walking and babbling and talking and being able to grab things and actually hold them, they're their own person at that point. Just roll with the punches at that point, and um, not hope for the best, but I mean, they're their own little tiny beings. They kind of do what they want at that point. You just have to sit back and enjoy every moment, because there's not going to be another first walking moment with that child. Um, there's not going to be another first time that you hear them say their first words. Um, so just enjoy it. I mean, catch it on video at this point if you can. Now that we have all these damn cameras, if you got a little camera in the nursery, definitely have it going
Or if you
because,
got a friend that's obsessed with filming everything.
yeah, yeah, definitely. Because you'll never, it may stick with you in your mind, but you're definitely going to want to show people. And yeah, it's the greatest thing there is.
That's better. Well, last kind of question is what's next for you?
Um, at this point, um, probably, I mean, I've been a stay-at-home dad for so long, it doesn't really seem like there's anything else out there at this point, you know? I
Yeah.
mean, all I know for basically 3 years is take care of Emily, give her the food she wants, give her the right answer that she wants, and play with her toys, and that's about it. But find the job. Um, at some point, I plan on heading back to school. Um, I think for sports science, um, get a degree, and then hopefully find something in my field. I mean, God bless Lindsay for holding down the house for this long, but she needs help. So right now, priority number one is find a job to be able to help her out, um, and help pay some of those bills so we can finally afford a house.
Into that.
Yeah.
I'll add in an extra question.
Okay.
This will be like a little thing that you can show Emily later on. What are your hopes for her, bro? Like at this point, it's been 3 years,
Yeah.
compared to when we all had the baby shower.
Well, I think Lindsay and I were both hoping that she'd be somewhat athletic. As of now, it doesn't seem like a possibility. She runs around the living room and she trips over her own feet every 2 minutes. So um, I think we want to get her into sports, get her into music, mainly just try and get her into as many different things as possible. Let her gather her own thoughts on what she wants to do, um, and kind of go from there. I mean, it's kind of what they always tell you. Don't If you want to play basketball in life, don't just focus on basketball. You're going to need other skills. Play football, play soccer, build up different skill sets. So I think get her into a bunch of different things, extracurricular activities, um, and see what fits her best. Um, and hopefully she finds the right passion in life that everyone else wants.
Awesome, brother. Well, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.